You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I'm Refocused Radio. We are here once again, just like any other time. We have another special guest. It's been a fun week. It's Friday. I'm glad it's almost a vacation weekend because, get to take a little nap before the grind happens again on Monday. But you know what? I have no excuse because we have a nurse, ER nurse. Oh, wow. She's already been busy. So I know she probably takes naps probably in the next life. So first and foremost, we have the one and only Jennifer Johnson, and she's going to teach us all about great things that nurses do. But on topic today, it will be nursing with heart. Excuse me, let me say it again. Nursing with heart, how to leverage your guts to help your patients. So first and foremost, big shout out to Canada, and I hope you're doing well today. How you doing?
I'm doing so well. Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate you taking time because I know with that field, it must be chaotic at times. So first and foremost, kind of tell the audience a little bit how you got into nursing, what inspired you to take that field.
I fell on my face. I 100% fell into nursing. Never once wanted to be a nurse, never really grew up with anybody being a nurse, never knew about shift work, nothing. Went to university, was in a biology degree, and hated it. Absolutely hated it. And so thankfully I had a girlfriend who was in nursing already, and she and I would pour over her textbooks, and it's all the ridiculously gross, 3D pictures. And you're like, oh my God, this is so cool. And so ended up swapping in after failing the first half of organic chemistry, which really sealed the deal on this is not my place. This is not where I'm supposed to be. So got into nursing, ended up meeting my now husband. And when I graduated, started in a hospital that was, there was one nurse for the ER. That was it. The town was so small that there was only one nurse for the ER with 3 nurses on the floor and maybe about 14 beds. But anything that was really interesting or anybody who was really sick would get flown out because there just wasn't any, we didn't have the capabilities to care for the sick. So, it's where everything started. That was my introduction to the ER and figuring out that I was in way over my head. And so took all the time that I could to read up on everything because they don't teach you any kind of emergency nursing, what's going to really get you in trouble. You need to watch out for these things, tips and tricks and those kinds of hacks that would really have been super helpful in nursing school had I since I went straight into the ER. But it was a learn on the fly situation as per most of nursing once you get to the bedside.
This almost sounds like not to be funny, but a mixture of Final Destination and the episode of The Office. I mean, wow. How about pressure? How did you deal with the pressure? Because I'm pretty sure you didn't just walk in and it was like, oh, this is easy.
No, it was a lot because it was so small, thankfully, there weren't that many people coming in day to day. Actually, for the most part, people would drive outside of the hospital and circle around till they saw which doctor's car was there to figure out which doctor was on that day, because the family doctors also covered the ER, which, I couldn't make this stuff up. It's just the funniest thing. So we had one doctor who was a little bit looser with the narcotics than the rest of them. And so those days, all of a sudden we'd go from seeing 2 to 4 patients in 12 hours to 12 to 15 to 20. And you're going, what happened? What is going on? And the whole place, kind of blows up in chaos. And you're like, what is happening? Why is today? And, after a couple of shifts together and after you start talking to the nurses, you go, oh, this is the reason why this is happening. He's taken on a little bit too many patients. He's a little bit loose with the narcotics. And nobody can get in to see him in his clinic days. So what they do is they just wait till he's on call in the ER and come and see him there for, like family doc issues, not ER issues.
When you look at how the whole industry works, I mean, you have a exclusive inside look. So you kind of know a lot better than someone outside who always got something nice or, interesting things to say about their healthcare. From an insider, what's the things that you can share with the audience that sometimes they don't understand what goes on in ER?
Yeah. So just because the waiting room is empty doesn't mean that the back of the ER where all the beds aren't full and busting. You never know if we're short-staffed. Your nurse probably won't tell you unless they're way done with the world and they're just going to put it out there. But if you watch us, you see how fast we're moving. You see, are we really rushing to like get things done and on to the next and get things done? And you can hear us too. Like if you're in a 4-bed room, you hear us going from bed to bed to bed to bed. You can gauge how long our interactions are. So if I'm doing my job correctly and you're not that sick, I can see you, assess you, have your vitals done, get a fresh set of vitals on the machine. And I've already pre-poured your meds if you're already admitted. And I'm coming in, I'm getting that all done like 5 to 6 minutes. If I'm really on my game that day. If everybody's admitted, that, it's just a stopgap because there's usually no beds on the floor. Here in Canada, in Ontario, you're waiting anywhere from 100 to 180 hours in the ER to then get a bed on the floor. That's after you've already been admitted. So you're waiting days and days and days to actually get to the medical floor. A lot of people are actually discharged after being admitted and they've been in the ER their entire stay. It happens. It's kind of an ebb and flow kind of thing. But we know that you can hear us. We know that you're frustrated. We know that you're scared and you're worried and you might be in pain. But if you're going to yell at us, threaten us, call us every name in the book and every language available, just know that we're probably not going to be really excited to go above and beyond for you or your family member. It's just that simple. Ask yourself, if you were saying this to a McDonald's employee, would you be getting arrested? The answer is yes. Please don't do that. Like, we can handle a lot and we brush a lot off because we know you're in pain, you're scared, you're not sure what's happening. But when you start getting in our face, when you start threatening our families, we're not going to put up with it. We're going to call security. And that's if we've got security. A lot of us, we don't have anything other than little security guards who are, no better than Walmart greeters, depending on the security company that's covering. But don't try a nurse. I don't suggest it. We've been pushed into corners before. We're in no place mentally to put up with a lot. If you push a nurse, you may get the real nurse come out. And a lot of us we've got some pretty harried pasts. We know how to defend ourselves. We've taken self-defense classes. We've put up with a lot through the years. So I wouldn't suggest trying us. That's just for everybody's safety.
I was about to ask a follow-up question on that. And by the way, let's not Refocused Radio, talking to our guest today, Jenn Johnson. And we're going to get to the topic, nursing with heart. But before we do that, I was going to ask about the training, because with all that pressure that does build up when you just have to have thin skin, but you also have to take care of these patients. And it's a balance, but kind of shed some light on that. Was some of the training that you guys have to go through to understand your options?
So in school, like the 4 years of university that you have to do up here to become a registered nurse, there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. There's just kind of on-the-job training. At least when you get to a hospital system, now with government mandates, there is you have to do mandatory safety training to protect both yourself as well as the patient. We all know it's more for the patient than for us, but we're just happy to have some education and some training. Other than that, it's not like we get formal conversation training on how to de-escalate situations verbally. truly, we just usually go through it the typical Canadian way, which is saying sorry. And I understand what you're going through, and I can imagine. And I understand this is frustrating, like validating people's feelings. 99% of the time, people just want to be heard and understood that they are suffering. And so when you stand there and say, look, I get it. This sucks. This is a horrible system. And I'm sorry we only have one doc on overnight, but that's just the way it is. And right now there is a life or death scenario going on. So of course they're going to be there. I'm sorry you're having to wait, but if that was your loved one having to be resuscitated, you would want the doc in there instead of seeing people who potentially could have gone to their family docs or walk-in clinic or an urgent care clinic. You'd want that, right? And some people get it. Some people, oh, yeah, no, that's understandable. Other people, either they can't get into their own head or out of their own heads, or put themselves in other people's positions where they just get uppity and you know, I was here first. I'm like, man, this is not a deli. This is not first come, first serve. This is sickest get seen first. And so managing expectations is a huge portion of it. You know, people are registering, they're seeing triage, and at triage, a lot of times they are asking, hey, what's the wait time kind of thing. And I just, as with everything, what is it?
Overthink.
Under promise, over deliver. So okay. It's, you know, the wait time's 6 to 8 hours, when in reality it's maybe 4 to 6. Doesn't mean we can't start some blood work ahead of time, doesn't mean we can't do some x-rays ahead of time, so by the time the doc comes to see you, they've already got a lot of the answers as to what's potentially going on. But we can't do everything. Our hands are kind of tied without the doc seeing you. I can't order a CT scan as much as I want to. They haven't let me yet. But it's one of those things where we're getting there. There are processes in place to really streamline things. But again, if we're short-staffed, it's hard to really tee people up the best you can before they get to see the doc.
And that's why I smiled when you mentioned about people asking about waiting time, because you kind of see that on shows and stuff like that on TV, where it's always like, that's the number one thing when you think about ER, how long do I have to wait? And I think that's a good point that you made about the priority you have, or hospital usually have, as far as who needs to be seen the most based on the situation, the severe part of that situation that determines who is on top of the list. For those who have even more better understanding of that process, what's your advice for people when, I mean, it's kind of surprising I have to ask this, but just for those listening or watching, what's some maybe good things a person can know to do and maybe not do when they show up to the ER, as far as the detail of their situation, and versus them just being a little bit respectful for everyone that has to be in play once they show up?
Yeah. So there's a lot of things you can do ahead of time to really make your trip through the ER a little bit smoother. If you can take Tylenol and Advil together at the same time. And that's the studies that they've done. It's comparable to the pain relief of Tylenol number 1, which we can get across the counter in Canada. And so you can do that. You can do that every 6 hours. So truly, if you're having some pain, it's not excruciating. You can try that and see if it helps your pain. If it helps your pain, maybe you can wait to see a family doc or a walk-in clinic or an urgent care clinic. If it's not working, by all means, come on into the ER. We're not going to turn anybody away. That's just not how we operate. But know that if you are waiting, it's actually kind of a good thing. You know, if I'm whisking you in before I'm even finished triaging you, you are sick. Like, you need to be seen right now. And truly, you actually don't want to be in that position, because if I'm really interested in you, if I'm, rushing you back right away, we're like rushing. If many people are coming at you all of a sudden, things are not good for you, my friend. And I'm really hoping that we can turn things around, and maybe it's not what I think it is, and all these other things. But if all of a sudden 2, 3, 4 nurses are coming at you all at once, it's not a good sign. So to be able to wait is actually kind of a blessing. You're not sick enough that I'm rushing you in. So if you can tweak your perception just a little bit as to, I I'm allowed to, what is it? I'm well enough to wait. And I'm thankful for that, because that means that, things aren't nearly as bad as maybe I think they are. I've gone on to Google, I've done some searching. Google's telling me that I'm dying. I'm sorry. Like, it's, Google's going to tell you worst case scenario, no matter what. It's probably in your best interest, unless you've got some medical background, not to get on Google. If you're that concerned, don't worry about Google. Just come on in, kind of thing. But yeah, if you have a list of your medications ready, what you're taking, why you're taking them, the dosages of everything. It's actually really helpful for us to know what you've already kind of got in your system, especially when it comes to like blood pressure medications, heart rate medications. To know what you've already got in your system lets us kind of jump ahead a couple of steps when we're trying other medications to help bring down your blood pressure or help bring down your heart rate. Just being respectful and kind, again, will get you a long way. A great way to kind of break the ER nurse shield down a little bit is just a compliment. And I'm not saying a physical compliment, because that grosses us out to no end. Compliment my glasses, compliment my watch, compliment my hair or something. It dazes me, to be honest. Somebody says something nice and you're like, oh, thank you. And you get chitty chatting. And sometimes I actually get a little bit more information because I'm a little bit more open. So it works out well that way. And truly, if the first thing out of your mouth is what's the wait time as you're sitting down, I've already checked out. I'm really sorry, unless I'm super concerned about you. And again, having to whisk you back immediately, you've lost me. I'm already kind of irritated. It's usually a long day. So saving your wait time questions maybe for the clerks or until maybe the triage is over. Even if you're asking the wait time, if it's something ridiculous like 6 to 8 hours, is that what's determining if you're going to wait or not? And if that's what's determining if you're going to wait or not, it sounds like you're really not that sick. So it's something to keep in mind when you're at home, you're worried, you're stressed. EMS, and so 911 and the paramedics are fantastic. They've got a lot of medications that they can do ahead of time, especially if it's like a kidney stone, which is exceedingly painful. They've actually got a non-narcotic medication that works better on kidney stones than anything else. So if you get EMS come to your home and you're writhing in pain, like you literally can't get up off the floor type of pain, they've got a lot of options to help control your pain before you even get to the hospital. On the subject of EMS and 911, just because you take an ambulance to a hospital does not mean you get in faster. You are still triaged the exact same way as everybody else. And if it is determined that you are kind of a walkie-talkie, you're alert and oriented and ambulatory, and you're able to wait in the waiting room, you are probably going to wait in the waiting room again, unless something is super, super serious. So just be aware of how you're using your support services.
This reminds me of, not to use a outside the box metaphor, but it's almost like when you're in traffic, there's always that one individual that feels it's their job to try to drive on the service drive or almost ditch and try to bypass everybody as if they're actually helping traffic. And it's like, that's actually counterproductive what you're doing, and it's kind of against the law.
It's super dangerous. What happens when somebody else ahead of you thinks that they're going to do that same thing and doesn't check their rearview mirror or their side mirror, and guess what? Bang. Now you're going to the hospital.
That and everyone's delayed even further. So what I'm getting from this is simply common sense. Treat people the way you want to be treated, number one. Two, never ask a nurse how long is the wait. Because I can imagine that, because that's probably a daily question that is asked from everybody. And it's understandable because they could be going through what they think is legit pain and they're scared, they're worried that something worse can happen. But this is great for people to understand. Even though if you might be angry by this, that's okay. You can give you live. But a good point to be made that give the nurses a chance to breathe, because if they can serve you better, maybe it's because you're actually better approachable. You're not going crazy, blaming everybody, and maybe you are in pain. It might be legit pain, or you're sick or whatever. Yeah. But I love the point you made, which I think is the most valid point of this interview, and that is, if you can wait and you're not dying, give that room to someone who may be worse off than you, and they actually need to jump ahead of you. Because I think that's an excellent point. If there's people out there who are actually going through something that's life and death, or just worse than you, that's the mindset you probably should have, versus, oh, I'm sore.
Yeah.
Not to
but
make
I haven't taken any Tylenol and Advil, and then I go to the ER, and then they get upset when I ask them, have you taken any Tylenol or Advil yet? And they go, well, no, I wanted you to see that it was a fever. I would take you at your word, and if you said you just had Tylenol and Advil, and I go to take your temperature and you don't have a fever, I just automatically assume, oh, the Tylenol and Advil are doing its jobs. You don't have a fever.
Yeah, I'm not laughing at people. I'm just laughing at the idea that it's almost like a SNL skit every time someone goes to the hospital. And it's not something to poke fun at, but it's this way. I'll put it this way. If you're being a jerk to a nurse and someone else is actually having a life-death situation, you need to calm down, because you kind of look like... I should be very careful what I say on the show, but I'll say this: you kind of look like a mean-spirited person. I will just put it that way, in a nice way, because I can't say what I want to say in my mind, because it might be.
Listen, neither can I. And if somebody is freaking out in the waiting room, and somebody in the waiting room wants to say something to kind of remind that person to check themselves, guess who also is on my new favorite patient list?
There you go.
The person who's saying something, because I can't. I can be very PC and, sir, I'm sorry, this is the wait time, and try to talk somebody off the ledge kind of thing. But if somebody else wants to say something, I'm not going to stop you.
It's like, come on, man. You got to wait 5 more minutes. Really? Someone detained and they have this situation. You're complaining about 5 minutes? Like, I'm glad I'm not a nurse, because I'll be like, say what?
You can say things in very, you can say things in very PC ways, where people sometimes, again, will actually get out of their heads and go, oh, yeah, sorry, and kind of backtrack a little bit. Unfortunately, it's few and far between. Thankfully, at least people don't come in raging. They don't usually come in raging. It's only, they've already come in, they've waited a few hours, they're getting frustrated, they're getting angry, they don't know how much longer, they don't know where they are on the whole wait time tracker thing. They don't know what's going on, and they just kind of escalate. And so sometimes it's unfortunate that somebody's already been waiting 3-4 hours, their loved one hasn't been seen, they're really worried. And the worst case scenario is when, somebody is getting upset, and then they tell me the story, because, maybe I'm coming on shift. I'm just coming on. I'm kind of getting a lay of the land, figuring out what's going on. And, this person's coming up and is a little angry and a little aggressive, but not usually too bad. But they're telling me something about their loved one, and their story is really making me concerned. I'm going, pardon? Like, oh. So then... it's bad if you're saying something and then the nurse is immediately going back and like checking on your loved one or seeing what's happening, because we are human. We do make mistakes. We do miscategorize some people sometimes, or, we're missing something. Maybe the patient didn't tell us the full story of what went on because they were, embarrassed or whatever else. It's sometimes you do have to be open that there have been mistakes made, and you just try to do best you can, especially if you're just coming on. And I've had people where I've come on, I'm the new nurse, and the family let me have it for like 10 minutes. And they were apologetic the whole time. They're like, we understand that this is not you. We get that this is not your fault, that you're just coming on. You're just, unfortunately, this is the breaking point that we've had, and you're the person in front of us. Okay. And thankfully, the best part was that she was supposed to have been a nurse and is doing this. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, okay, let me give your data once over. We'll figure everything out. Not a problem. But I sent them home because I'm like, look, you're obviously exhausted also. Like, you say that you've been here all day, all night, and I'm coming on. So it's like 36 hours. I'm like, you need to go home and sleep, because this isn't a place to sleep for sure. So go home and sleep, have a shower, eat, take care of yourself. I've got your dad. Mom's going to stay back a little bit. So that's fine. You've still got somebody at the bedside, but you need to go home. And so didn't she come back at the end of my shift? I didn't even recognize her. She was showered. She had done her hair. She'd done her makeup, and she actually brought chocolates, the Apollo chocolates, where it's, I'm so sorry to have freaked out on you kind of thing. And I'm like, it's, it happens. You're frustrated. I get it. I just wish the Apollo chocolates weren't needed, because it kind of, tainted the whole rest of the shift. Because I was then in a mood the whole shift. Like, somebody just yelled at you for 10 minutes, of course, is going to affect your day.
Once again, listen to Refocused Radio, talking to our guest today, Jenn Johnson. And believe it or not, we're actually talking about the whole topic of the show today. And I want you to wrap this up, and I can't believe time just flew by like that.
Sorry, I talk a lot.
No, you're good, because I love that story, because that whole story was about the whole topic about the heart, because when you are nursing with the heart, you go into moments like that. And to emphasize what we're trying to say, and that is, this is a great learning curve for people who are patients to practice a little bit more understanding for the nurses out there who are trying to do the best with what they are working with. And yeah, there probably might be some few that maybe picked the wrong career and they just kind of skating by and don't really care. But I think that'll probably be a lot fewer than what is actually out there, and that is great nurses who actually do care about patients. In wrapping this up, when you think about how you use your gut feeling, intuition, if you will, when you're trying to use compassion for the patients, how do you balance that from the scientific, protocol that you must stick with, and the expectations that the hospitals and doctors have for nurses? How do you balance going through the protocol versus, my gut says this with this patient?
So you're always going to lead with science first, right? It's a nonstop issue where you are leading with science. It's when, you're walking by a patient and you stop, because you're looking at the color, you're looking at the patient, you're going, what is going on here? Like, I need more information. I feel like something's off. And so, especially as a charge nurse where you kind of oversee everybody, you want to make sure that everybody's safe and everybody's okay and that they've got a good handle on things, because sometimes EMS drops off a patient in the hallway and hasn't let the nurse know that there is a patient there, and then just kind of goes away. And, that nurse hasn't really gotten a chance to get the heads up that there is somebody pretty sick in the hall. So being open to, when your gut is screaming at you is huge. Recognizing that that's happening is probably the biggest key. The second biggest key is actually just realizing, am I going to do anything about it? And if nothing else, you can say that, I'm advocating for my patient. Nobody is ever going to fault you for saying that you're advocating for your patient. Do you have to sometimes change up the messaging just a little to kind of make it a little bit more palatable depending on who you're talking to? Absolutely. I've done that for years. You'll go to your doctor and say, hey, I just don't know what's wrong, or something's off. I'm just not sure. Is there a way that you can come and see this patient right now? Or, I'm not sure about this patient. Where are they on your list? Are you coming to see them shortly? Because I think I need more information as to what's going on. And that is 100% acceptable as a way to advocate for your patients. And so it's not like you are running around just using your gut kind of thing. It's, you're starting with the science. There's only usually, a moment in a shift where you're saying, I just don't know about this patient, or I just don't know about the history, or I just don't know as to if there's a part of the story that I'm missing. And I just need to be very careful so that the patient doesn't end up suffering for it. And then I don't get caught with my pants down kind of thing. Like, I need to be on top of the moments where I feel like I'm missing something and just being extra cautious. And so even using your intuition, if you're just developing it, if you're just kind of leaning into it a little bit more, just know that the science also says that when you let the doctor know about your patient, that you're concerned, and the doctor comes and sees that patient, even if the patient's not nearly as sick as you thought they were, nothing really needs to be done. And, okay, so you're wrong. That's okay. The science still says that even the doctor having that another touch point on that patient still improves patient outcomes. So do not worry or fret about using your intuition, especially when it comes to your patients, because you're going to win no matter what. Your patient's winning, you are winning. There's no damage to be done by trying and learning to trust your gut, especially when all of a sudden you start being right. And then you lean into it, and then you start letting the doc know, and then your patients are actually improving because of it.
You've been listening to Refocused Radio, and we've been talking to our guest today, Jenn Johnson. You go to her website, nursejen.ca. My last question to wrap this up is, we know you're from Canada, but when it comes just to the professionalism of being a nurse, those who may be thinking about going to nursing school or maybe in the process of being in nursing school, based on your personal experience and firsthand knowledge being in the field, what's some encouraging words or wisdom you would want to give those nurses when they prepare to be in the field one day?
Yeah, just know that the learning curve is straight up. It is not you. It is just the fact that there is so much to nursing, and there are so many variations of how to nurse that they can't possibly teach it all. So know that if it hurts to nurse, like you're finding that you're really struggling, you feel like you're not learning enough, you're not learning fast enough, you're not quite getting it, that's okay. It takes a long time to get comfortable. Even after 16 years, sometimes I will find myself going, I need an adult nurse. And I'm going, I am the adult nurse. Like, there will still be moments you will still look back and say, like, those fourth years, man, they really had it together. And then you'll be a fourth year nursing student. You'll be like, somebody who's been working 2 years really has their stuff together. Then you'll be that second year nurse, and you go, man, that person working 5 years, they really have it together. And it just, there's always learning. There's always going to be difficult days. There's always going to be hardships. It is hard, but it is so worthwhile. And just truly celebrate the little wins. Celebrate the times where you're able to change somebody in the bed and change the entire bed while they're still in it. That's a big skill. The first time you start an IV and you get it, celebrate the win. The first time you recognize what a medication is and what it does without having to look it up, that's a win. Take the little wins, because it's the little wins that make a career. And just know that you are not alone. We all struggled. We all continue to struggle. It's not you. It's just the system that we're in. And we're doing the best we can with what we've got. But if you love it, hang in. And if you don't love it, please choose something else, because it's not going to get any better.
I know I was supposed to end this a long time ago, but I have another question for you.
Go, do it. Do it. Love it.
This is a good conversation. So I want to understand this. My interactions with nurses throughout my life, they are always calm. And I want to ask you this. Are there any times when a nurse is just beginning in the field that they have to deal with nerves, or is that something that kind of occasionally comes and go?
It's hard. So usually when there's a critical scenario, your adrenaline will start to come up, and it takes a long time to get used to the adrenaline coming up. Because when it first, so you're having a patient, they're going sideways, you've called maybe the rapid response team, they're there, and you shake. And it is not you, it is the adrenaline. And you shake. And that's okay. You feel like your heart rate comes up, it's in your throat. You're almost vibrating, because the nerves and your hands won't stop. And it takes a long time for that to kind of wear off after the situation's kind of been handled. So again, give yourself a lot of grace when dealing with that, because it's not something that most people deal with on a daily basis, unless you're a complete adrenaline junkie. You're throwing yourself off of, you're skydiving and you're bungee jumping and you're doing all these things where that's what you're looking for. But know that it's It's the hormone. It is not you. So get used to it, and that's okay. It takes time to embrace it. There will come a point when the shaking stops and you laser focus and you know exactly what you're supposed to do. You know exactly how you're supposed to act. You go. And that's watching that transition and feeling that transition is huge. So give yourself lots of credit when dealing with those types of scenarios, because most people have never dealt with a scenario when somebody else's life is in danger, or, you know, things are happening very, very quickly and you're kind of at the core of it. So just, you know, breathe, stay still if you can. If you don't have to be directly doing anything, watch what the others are doing, ask questions when appropriate. You know, if somebody is standing back and just kind of, you know, watching everybody else do everything else and they've got more experience than you, ask them questions. Ask them, you know, was there anything I missed? How can I do better? What can I expect with this kind of outcome? What kind of drugs are they giving? You know, figure out all the things where you can learn and be better for next time, because that's just what it is. It's just continual learning, and then also kind of mitigating the stress factors of being human along with it.
You sound like someone who chose this career on purpose. Because I don't believe
it found me
in the beginning. Because wow, you sound like you should be doing a seminar somewhere. But once again, talking to our guest today, Jenn Johnson. She go to her website, nursejen.ca, and like always on the show, I want to say thank you for your time.
Anytime. Thank you very much for having me.